Today we're going to be going over the installation of the Heezy HTS15 single circuit generator transfer switch. And this is how you will receive it when you order it. You got the single transfer switch, you have a box of parts, and the transfer switch already comes pre-wired. It's got the, the conduit already connected to it, with about, I think there's over 3 feet of wire, enough to wire into your circuit breaker panel and or right at the unit. And it also comes with the installation manual and user guide. So we're going to go over how to install this today on a circuit breaker panel. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do once we're ready for the installation is obviously clear an area around so it's easy for you to work on installing the generator transfer switch. I've opened up the panel here, and what I need to do is identify which breaker it is I want to power with the transfer switch. So if you're wiring this for a furnace or boiler, you want to verify that the breaker that you're servicing is the correct breaker on your panel that's labeled. And generally what you want to do is I like to just put a piece of tape, or you can shut that one breaker off if it's the only one that's on. And so we got 2 sides, and generally it's broken up. There's an even side and an odd side. And a lot of times there'll be either stickers or the metal is stamped itself with the numbers. So on the left side here it's 1, 3, 5, so on. And the other side is 2, 4, 6, 8. So we want to identify which breaker it is that you want to power. And let's see, I got to find it here. So on this one I'm going to do the refrigerator. This is for the indoor refrigerator. And the reason why I want to power that is instead of running a bunch of extension cords through the house, we're just going to hook it up here so we can power up our freezer. The furnace, the gas furnace already has a transfer switch installed on the outside of it, so it's real accessible right here in the garage. But anything inside is a little harder, so I'm going to go down here and find out which one it is. And I got number 14, so I got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I got the number here. And I'm going to put a piece of tape on that after I shut it off here. I'm going to shut it off. And I've already actually shut off my refrigerator. You can see I got that label there, it's off. And what we're going to want to do is shut off the main breaker. So I'm going to shut this light off here. And I already got the generator running. And I have these lights set up for the camera. You can also use a headlamp or any flashlight or lamp, anything you have to give you some light while you're working on it. The door's right here, but it's generally, if I didn't have the lights on, it would be pretty dark, and we want to make it so it's as safe as we can. So the next thing we got to do is shut off the main breaker. Now it's very important you shut off the main breaker. I don't want anyone to get electrocuted. It's just not worth it to try to work on a live panel. I'll just recommend go through your house and shut off all your lights, any major appliances that might be running, such as a refrigerator or freezer. Just turn the switch off. You just got to remember to go back after you're done and turn everything back on. And that way it's not in the middle of a cycle when you shut it off. It's important that you don't have like that power fluctuation. It just can reduce the life of equipment if you're doing it all the time. And just one less chance of something going wrong if you take and shut it off. So same with your, if you got your gas furnace or heat pump or anything like that running. So I got the breaker labeled. We're ready to go. We can pull this, because once we pull this panel off, we're not going to know which breaker this is. And I'm going to shut off the main breaker here. So it's generally a very large breaker at the top. So everything power should be off. What I'm going to do is just verify with the light here. Nothing works. But we don't want to take that for granted. So when we pull this panel off, we're going to check with our meter. So I'm going to go ahead and close this door now. And we got, on this one, I got 6 screws. So I'm going to go ahead and real quick here and unscrew these. So our main power feed is coming in on top here. And what I got here is that this is a flute volt stick. This will light up when it's in around power. And this is a 90 to 600 volt. And as you see when I get close here, it's going to light up. So our main power is coming in the top here, these giant lugs. That's the only thing that should have power anymore. If I go down below here, once it goes through this main breaker, it should all be off, and it is. A lot of times these will have a protective cover on them. These ones don't. So we got to be real careful working around that. But when I go down below here, there is no power. And so always you want to verify that these work before you take them for, you don't want to take them for granted basically. So that's one way. I always double check two different ways. The other one is with a volt ohm meter. So if you got a voltmeter, go ahead and plug that around that. You might be able to see it. I'm going to test the voltage across our main feed here. So I got 242.56 volts. When I go to ground, which is in the center, or our neutral ground, they're both on the same lug. I don't know if you can see that. It's 121.2, and on this side it's 121.2. So the other thing is we need to verify that this breaker doesn't have power, the one that we're servicing. So even though we've checked all that, I want to come over here, get right on that wire, and let that breaker shut off, and go to ground, go to the panel. If you can find a blank screw, basically right where you got the screw hole, it's a good spot. So our power's off. Okay, so I'm going to go over some observations here on this panel. Your panel will obviously be different, but I'll kind of give a brief construction view of what's behind the sheetrock. And so what we got here is, and you can, a lot of times you can look with a flashlight and or a probe, and you can see that we got a stud right here. And I can actually see from here where they filled the screw holes in, but you can also see the studs right there. A lot of times they're open, and these are actually mounted on this back side. There's a piece of plywood crossed. So this thing is usually mounted in a 6-inch studded wall, and then on the back side they put plywood, and then, or it can be 4-inch wall, but generally it's a flush mount like this, and that panel overlaps, which is nice because it doesn't have to have a perfect clean fit here. But so the one thing I can notice here is that I got lots of openings on the bottom, which is great. That's where I like to come in for the most part, is on the bottom, or on the bottom left or right. Especially on this one, a lot of times when they run electrical, it's ran in from the top. So the electrician, when they're running power into the house, a lot of times they're running in the top, or they'll all be coming up off the bottom. But generally you'll see coming in on the top like this, you run your lines down, and you kind of bring them back up and put them in, so that way you got extra room. So some more identification. I'm going to use so we got two power feeds, 120 volt on this side, 120 volt on this side. Behind here is our neutral bar, and that neutral bar runs all the way down here, and there's another bar on this side, which is the ground. Now this ground and neutral are actually bonded together, and if you actually look at the bars and kind of what they have here, they're exactly the same. So it all runs in to this neutral here in this ground. So keep that in mind, that for wiring purposes, that you have that option. If you don't have any space open, for instance, on one side, you can theoretically run them both on the same. Now I can see that where the electrician, this is a new panel, and I was retrofitted, I didn't do it, and I can see what they did on one of this, and I'll point to it here. You probably won't be able to see it in the video, but there's a ground right here. So obviously when they're putting in this new panel, there wasn't enough space to run this ground over here on the main ground bar where all the other grounds are. They had to run it here. And it passed inspection. some of the inspectors will frown upon it, but most of the time they'll pass it because it's all part of the same thing. They just don't like it when it's really out of whack and you got a whole bunch of grounds on one side and a whole bunch of neutrals on the other. Generally, if you can do it right, and do the grounds on one side and the neutrals on the other. And the other thing is it's not labeled, so it's not like this one says neutrals and this one says ground. They're exactly the same. It's basically identical on either side, so it doesn't really matter. So let's go into installing our transfer switch and what we need to get done. So the transfer switch has 5 wires on it. We got, I'll just zoom in here and bring it in close. But we got 5 wires. We got a black, a red, those are our 2 hots. And then we got a white with a blue stripe, and then a wire with all white, and then a green for our ground. So this is our blacks are hot, and our reds are hot. And so one's the power coming in, and one's the power going back out is basically all that is. Same with our neutral. The neutral coming in, neutral going out, and our ground. So those are the only wires that we need to terminate. And so one thing is you want to install it so far away that when we run this, we don't have enough to reach over here. So we want to make sure that we run this in an area where we have plenty of space, it's safe to work on. And I'm thinking down in this area possibly, depending on if there's a stud here or not. So I need to find out. If there's a stud, then we need to come in off the bottom. What's interesting here is they got that stud that's here, but when they ran it through here, they obviously had a drill hole. So what we're gonna do is I'm just kind of knocking to see if I can hear, but with some of the sheetrock mud, it's a little thick. So we got to find a location to punch out the knockout so that we can install this. Okay, so looking at this, a lot of times you can come in with like a flashlight and kind of see. You can also tell if they ran anything off the side. So I believe there's a couple studs running down here possibly. So what I'm doing, I'm thinking about putting this switch on this bottom here. It's pretty hollow sounding. I can't really see anything. And I got here a saw for the drywall saw here. And I'm just going to test and see if I can find a spot. If I poke it through here, right there's nothing. I do have that wire there. I don't like having this wire kind of in the way, but so I can run it up right here if I want. And basically just mount this thing, and all you want to do is be able to get it so the conduit is like that, or on the other side. And we'll actually cut this conduit, but you want to keep in mind is that this lip for this panel and where it kind of sits, and a lot of times you can mark your line and see where you're at. But so for this case, we're going to mount this thing somewhere in this vicinity, and we need to find out kind of if we can get in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right around here. I'm just going to cut a little section through here. Let's see if we can get that. Cutting a line down. I'm make sure I'm probably about 2 inches here. That's enough to if we get our conduit in at an angle, and I'll show you, we might have to cut a little way with the panel, but it's not a problem. And then the other, I'm going maybe 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches. And I'll show you the reason why. We'll grab the parts here, and that is our connector. So you can just kind of go off of this as well. So we got our conduit connector there that we're going to need. The wire nuts here stuck inside. course. So, you know, it's going to be like that. You can also get a straight connector, but you can also come in at an angle. It doesn't really matter what you got. Cut this just wide enough, you know, to kind of get that, squeeze that through there. That's all you've got to do. I hope that is clear, and it is. So. Now we got our hole cut. We want to lay this out. I don't know where we want to put this. So we got to keep in mind we got our panel, and it overlaps probably an inch from these holes. So I want to make sure I keep at least an inch and a half away. What I'm going to do is just make this really easy. Just have the conduit come across here like this, so it's nice and straight. It's going to be under the panel. Panel is an inch overhang. We'll be able to come up under here and run it in there, run in that knockout. So now we got that. And a couple things we can do. We could cut this at an angle. And we'll see how it kind of fits in there. Now we got to get that knockout out. And a lot of times they're set up, it's best to come from underneath if you can. Kind of makes it tough though sometimes. What I'm going to do is grab a long screwdriver. I don't mind damaging flathead. Works real good for that. Long flat tip screwdriver. And then that one was really easy. All I had to do was just kind of pry it and it kind of popped up. And it all depends on the, if you see more of the raised section on the inside, it wants to come this way. So a lot of times if I tried knocking that out going down, it would have been a real fight. And sometimes it breaks off more of a space that you want. So we only need to knock out the little ½ inch section, which is the smallest one. I'm just going to grab my pliers here, pull that off. So now we got that part. And what I want to do is try to figure out how much conduit I'm going to need. That's kind of can be tricky sometimes. A lot of times it's just kind of figuring out, marking it. And what you can do on this, which is real handy with the aluminum flex, is once you got your little spot marked, you just kind of squeeze it like that, and it'll split right in that spot. But you still got to cut it. You got a pair of side cutters. Just kind of bend it back, and then just be real careful that you don't actually cut the wire in there. And then I'll be able to pull that section off. Now we got our conduit there. So on this, you're going to want to take the nut off. Just kind of set it aside there, and you can pull this cover off if you need to. And it comes with the 2 angle connectors, but if you need to use a straight connector, you can supply that. The general, what I like to do is just loosen the screws back, and then take the wire with the, hopefully you still got the tape on it, you didn't pull it off yet, and just kind of bend it over one finger so you get a little sharp bend in it, and then you can feed that through your connector, and then you just pull pull the wire through like that. Makes it real easy. So the tricky part here is that you have to tighten it down and then get it in there. So what I'm going to do is pull this wire through first here, put the nut on. Sometimes these nuts have grooves on one side, some are both sides. This is a single-sided one. So we want to make the grooves down so it catches. I'm going to turn that. And once I get to this part right here, I'm going to tighten that down with the screwdriver. Connect her tight on here. Okay, so now I've got that nice and tightened down. I'll pull this a little more here. See if we can get the fit. Yeah, just like I figured it would. It's a little tight here. It wants to hit on this, which is what I was kind of hoping. So I wanted to cut that away. So I actually cut too much of the conduit. I could actually probably loosen this up. There's a lot of it in this one to make it, but I kind of don't like that sharp bend. So what I'm going to do is cut away some more here. And actually, I don't need to do it that low. I need to kind of keep it under that panel. This is kind of an experiment in prog and what you want to do, but kind of don't know until you really get in the panel what you got. So I'm gonna pull that away. Now I can pop that in there at a nice good angle. Get that nut on there. Well, now I got it in there. It's a lot better like that. Kind of got a bigger hole than really necessary, but just to show you guys, you know, you kind of don't know until you open it up. And I got this one that we pulled out that we could actually use, kind of fit back in there. And you can sheetrock back over this and kind of fill this in with mud. That's all you got to do. But on this, and then you got to tighten that down. Just tighten that nut down on that. So now we're mounted. Our wiring's there. If you want, might be a good time to check and see if your panel clears everything. I know we're over, you know, an inch from that, so we should be good on there. Now that we got that, there's a couple methods you can go about doing it. It doesn't really matter what order you do, but I think what I like to do is do the ground and neutrals first. Okay, so it doesn't really matter on what method you do for the wiring. It only matters that you know, you get everything terminated properly. I like to start with the ground and do that first. And we got our ground on this side. Remember, we got to be real careful up here. This is our danger area. So I like to see what the lowest ground that I can access is. And it's about 1, 2, 3, 6 wires up. So I'm going to strip this away. Some wire strippers, and you want to strip about 3/8 of an inch or so. If you want, you can, you know, kind of tuck it behind other wires. The big thing is you want to tuck it behind all these other wires. You don't want to go in front. And so just kind of feed it up, and you probably can wait to strip it if you want. Until after you get it all fed up, you know, fed to the particular area. As long as you stay away from that top part, you'll be safe. So I'm gonna come up here. I'm gonna kind of tighten that up with the right hand twist as I'm facing the wire. And I got that one that I can access there. I'm going to loosen that up. And some of these are going to be a flat tip, and some are going to be with like a square, the number 2 square, and this one is a flat. So with a square on it. So I'm just going to loosen the nut up, and the green is your ground. You kind of maybe bend it a little bit an angle there so you can kind of get it in, and just feed it behind the nut. Make sure you don't have any stray wires kind of hanging out, and then hold it in there while you tighten it down. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is either do our hot or our neutral side. And it doesn't really matter, again, what you start with. The tricky part with this is finding your neutral a lot of times. So what I'm going to do is, I got my hot here. I can see exactly which one it is. And what I want to do is, for this breaker, is I'm going to actually pull this off. I'm going to do the hot side first here. Okay, so now that we got the black wire off, that's serving the circuit that we want to trace out, we're gonna pull this wire and basically find out where our neutral wire is connected to this black wire in the Romex. So it comes up top here, and it comes into this Romex right here. And so this white wire is, I need to pull that off of our neutral bar. So I got that pulled out, traced out here, and it's this wire here. And so I need to come down and find out where that's at. And I see it there. And I gotta disconnect that neutral. So I'm gonna pull that neutral out. And it's very important now that I 100% verify that that's the neutral it's going to. And what I'm gonna do is just kind of make sure. A lot of times when you move it, you can feel it, but sometimes when there's so many wires, you got to be real careful at the top here. So I can tell now that I'm pulling this, that is our neutral wire. So we got our neutral and our hot. So our circuit that we're serving. We don't do anything with the ground. We ran that ground to our ground bar. Okay, now that we have that taken care of, now we just need to connect up our hot and our neutral to the transfer switch. And for that, we're going to use these colors stay the same. So we got our black going to black, and our all white wire going to the all white neutral. So it's really easy to follow. We're going to need to strip about 3/8 to a 1/2 inch. I generally like about a 1/2 inch when I'm doing the wire connector nuts. And then using one of the wire nuts, we're just going to put those together. You don't need to pre-twist these as you would if you had 2 solids. Using the wire nut, I'm just going to keep twisting it on there. And before it gets real hard, I'm going to tug on it, make sure that both the wires are good and tight. And I'm going to keep twisting. What's going to happen is that they're going to twist over on each other. You know you got a really good tight connection. So I got that. And one of the things I like to do is have, if possible, have the wire nut facing up. If there is any vibration at any point, or if it was to come loose, it generally, if you do that, the nut sometimes will stay on longer. Shouldn't ever come off, but just for reference. And the other thing is, if there's ever water dripping in a panel, that it won't drip inside that wire nut. So now our hot side is all wrapped up. Now I got to do the neutral. So I'm going to do the same thing here on the neutral, strip that away, about a 1/2 inch. I'm using a wire nut. I'm going to connect that up to the neutral. So white to white, black to black. Until it starts twisting over on itself. Okay, we got that. I'm going to turn that wire nut like that. Kind of tucked in. And sometimes, depending on where these neutral bars are, sometimes they're up high. It'll all depend on your configuration. So now our only last two wires that are left is our red and our white with the blue stripe. So starting with the white with the blue stripe, we need to strip away on that, and about anywhere from 3/8 to 1/2 inch, kind of whatever your preference is. Because we're just going to be going into that neutral bar again, and you can go right back in that same spot that was at before, and just go from there. I'm going to tuck that in. I'm going to go back here and determine which one that was under. And there it is. Stick that back in there. Okay. And then screw it down. Remember, this is the white with the blue stripe is going on the neutral bar. Now, depending on your configuration, you might need to wire this differently. So keep in mind to look at what's in the book, depending on your generator and the type of whether or not the neutral needs to be switched or not. So in this one, we're wiring it to be switched. And I recommend this first start with this, and if it doesn't work, then you can kind of look at the alternative methods. So now the last wire we have left is just our red wire. And we just need to strip about 3/8 on this one. And this is the one that's going to go right into our breaker that we got labeled here. We still got our tape on it. And I'm going to go ahead and strip that away. I'm going to twist this around, make sure it's nice and tight. And so we're just going to go right back underneath our wire here, and there's usually a little retaining nut. Flat. You want to make sure it gets under that. Okay, so I got that tight. Tuck that wire in there. And like I said, if you got a lot of excess wire, you can cut it off. Just keep in mind that. So now we got it all wired up. Our main breaker's still off. This breaker's still off. This is shut off on our transfer switch. Now we can put our main panel back on and screw that down. Everything's back on. I'm going to pull the tape off of this and just kind of put it off the side here for a second. So I'm going to keep this switched off on our transfer switch. We're ready to turn our main breaker back on. And everything else is as it was, so it shouldn't have any issues. So we're just going to turn that on. So everything should be back on. Now if I switch this on, nothing's going to happen because that's still off. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn on the main lights here. So that's as it is. So now that power is coming down, going through our transfer switch, and everything's off. When I switch this to the main line, that's going to give that power back up and go into those wires that we wired to the wire nuts, going back to our appliance or furnace or whatever it is. So now this is back to normal, everything's running. And why I got the generator going, and I want to test this on the generator mode. So what I'm going to do is go inside the house, verify that the refrigerator is on now. Turn the refrigerator on. The light should come on when I open the door, letting me know it's on. And we're going to come back out and test our generator. It's very important that we test it, and we know that everything works so that we don't have any issues when it actually comes time to use it. And so we'll do that next. Okay, so we still got our generator running, and while we have that running, I went and verified that this circuit, which is serving the refrigerator circuit inside, the refrigerator is on and running. I have it in the line mode, and all we got to do when we have a power outage is come out here. And it's always a good idea just to shut that off. So we got our power cord coming from our generator. The generator is outside and it's running, and so all we got to do is we have it off. I'm going to plug this in here, some tight, and then we're going to go to the generator side. It says gen or plug, and I can hear a little bit tone different in the generator, so I know that it's probably the compressor kicked on the refrigerator, and it should be running. So I'm going to go verify that. Okay, so I just went and verified the refrigerator is running and everything is powered up like normal. And so what we would do in a power outage, especially on a refrigerator or even a gas furnace, is we'd run it just long enough to satisfy our needs. So with refrigerators, we want to run it till it cools down and it shuts off like normal. And you should be able to hear it even on a new refrigerator when it shuts off, the compressor. And then you would just come back out here and shut this off, and now we can disconnect our cord, or you can leave the cord in if you're running your generator periodically, and you just will come back out and start up for a long power outage. But basically you're good to go. When your power is restored, you're just going to come back and switch it to the main line. And now the power is going through and is powered up like normal. And that's all there is to it. I want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please send me an email and let me know. Thank you.